I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
From the gates of Mount Rome to the far corners of the endless highway, wherever you are, welcome to the show.
So you believe in some kind of Armageddon?
Yeah, most definitely. We in the last times and days right now. The Illuminati's in effect.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. My guest today is longtime researcher, investigator. He's an international speaker and an author, and much more. Ole Dammegård, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's a real joy to be here with you.
Yes. I know that you are a voracious researcher, and I want to be careful about how I ask this because it's kind of a personal question, but
go for it.
In your research, have you found things that pertain to your own backstory? And here's the personal question. Were your parents involved in any of the stories that you research?
This is, the answer is yes, and I had absolutely no idea. So I've been down this rabbit hole for almost 45 years now. So, and I come from a journalistic background, but then I got myself, I just felt super confused in my job. And the more I looked into these type of things, because it was just like over and over again, I found that the official narrative on a local level, on a national level, on an international level, there seemed to be some weird things going on sometimes if it was sensitive topics. And so as a journalist, I learned to look in, I'm answering your question, but with a long answer. I learned to listen to what was not being said, what was not written, because we were giving press releases and it was all looking pretty and, whatever it was, it all looked so good. But it was like in the silence, in between what people avoided answering, what people didn't write, that's where the thing is. So what I learned was to listen instead of talking, and just also watching their facial, movement and micro reactions and stuff like that. So really look at the person when I was talking instead of thinking about my next question, really observing what's going on here. And over the years, many people see me as number one in the world when it comes to exposing and decoding false flag operations and some of the top political assassinations. And I didn't know why this topic sort of sucked me in and made me devote my whole life to this, because I'm deeply in love with the truth, whatever the truth is. And it's only recently, I think it was, my father died in 1992, my mother died in 2013. And one night in 2017, I woke up with this, I just heard my father's voice in my head where he said, "The key is in the ring, the key is in the ring." So I woke up with that, whoa, the key is in the ring. And I woke up my sweetheart and I said, "The key is in the ring, the key is in the ring." She said, "What key?" I said, "I have no idea, but the key is in the ring." And then this dream really followed me. And then I remembered that the only thing I had from my father was his ring. And I was the only one there when he died. And the only thing he had on him, he was in a hospital naked, was the ring, the silver ring. And it was the only thing I cared about, that I would like the ring, but I'd never really looked at it. And I mean, I'm born in Denmark. My father was Danish. And so I had like a little shrine or whatever. And in the middle piece of it was his ring. And so for the first time, I really looked at it, and it turned out that it's a US Air Force ring. I'm asking you, how does a Danish citizen get a US Air Force ring? And so I just remembered he had it his whole life. And so I started checking out my photo albums, all the family photos going back all the way to the 50s. The ring was still there. How? And that one opened up a whole different. I mean, what really got to me was like, if I'm getting into this area, which I've now got confirmed that my father and my mother also was working for NATO as secret assets, building up the Danish version of the Gladio network, which is the NATO's ghost army. In Denmark, it went under the code name Absalon, but all NATO countries have different names for the same thing. But it is the same thing, and it's mandatory for nations when they join NATO to create one of these secret ghost armies. It has been denied over and over, but there was this massive scandal in 1990 that erupted in Italy, where it turned out that more than 10,000 people were involved on the Italian part of it, all the way up to prime ministers and above, whoever they are, were involved in this. And then this scandal spread to France and Belgium and including Denmark and also Sweden, which is a neutral country, should not have a ghost army. But if you ask me, Sweden has been part of NATO since 1954, not officially. But there's this deception going on that we have to look through if we're looking for the real truth. So I've now got it confirmed from Swedish intelligence, which is very strange that I got it from Swedish intelligence since my parents were in Denmark, but that my parents actually seem to have met and were put together as assets, not from love, which I was told, but they were put together for a reason, and there was a reason for their marriage. I also think that it's possible that I was married as part of a front for one of these NATO operations, because in those days, children were needed to give sort of like a good facade of the perfect family that nobody would look into. And so, which also explains why my dad never seemed to have wanted children. And also that there are all of these strange things that I grew up with. To answer your question, I think I was born into one of these operations. I had no idea until many years after both of them died that they were actually living a double life and that I was living a lie. That because now I have photos of my parents sitting in a car right on top of one of NATO's most top secret underground bases on the east coast of Denmark the year before I was born. And you can see in the background, I found that exact NATO base because now it's a Cold War museum. They opened just a few years ago, but I have a photo from 1957 of that exact entrance, but in that there was with camouflage cover. It's in the middle of nowhere, and there they are in this big flashy car. That all of these NATO assets, I found out now, seem to have been given as a thank you for their loyalty. Big American, they had a Bel Air, Chevy Bel Air from '57, brand new, and my dad didn't even have a job officially. He was working at a gas station. That would be like me having a Lamborghini standing outside, going on social welfare and having a Lamborghini. It doesn't make any sense. So I think that this confusion I'm talking about when it comes to the truth has come from me from the day I was born, because I came into this world just like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. This person, Uncle Bob, how is he's not your brother. He's not your brother. Where does he come? And this uncle, this and this and this. It turns out that these uncles in Scandinavian languages, you have one word for your father's brother and one word for your mother's brother. So it's like father, brother, mother, brother is the word for it. These were key words in this organization for people involved in the network. So Uncle Tom or Uncle Bob or Uncle Hill, were code names for these networks, and our house was filled with them. So my dad was on not a top level, but he was like, I think, on the third level from the top. And on at the top level, we're talking people like Alan Dulles from the CIA, the head of the CIA. We're talking about Eisenhower. We're talking about these guys. I've got photos with one of my father's friends who was exactly at the same level as he, together with Dwight Eisenhower. They're standing, looking out. He's in the whole shebang, soldier outfit, including with the bush on the helmet. Him and Dwight Eisenhower, they're looking out, looking at some operation going on. It's not a group photo, it's a photo of the two of them.
Yeah.
And anyway, so
Well, that does go back to the 50s. You said you traced your dad's ring back in photos and whatnot, and it goes back to the 50s. Well,
now it goes back.
Eisenhower even further,
Yeah,
right?
it goes back. He was headhunted in the end of the Second World War.
That's what I
He
was
was
going to ask you, is if you think it goes back to the mid 40s or the early 40s in World War II with him.
Yeah,
Maybe he had
yeah.
some sort of he established some sort of contact with the Americans during World War II.
No, it's exactly correct. He was in the resistance movement. He was a lieutenant, and underground. He was part of doing a lot of secret operations in Denmark. I'm talking about my father now,
Yes.
and it's in that network where these other people that I've also tracked down. There's 5 of them that I've been tracking down because they have very similar stories. Officially, they didn't know each other. I'm telling you, they know each other. I can have followed them like this on the map, and. And what the CIA and MI6 did at the end of the Second World War was that they went into, especially Denmark, occupied, Nazi occupation, and Norway, Nazi occupation at the same time. And they went in and they headhunted people for the Cold War to come. They were already planning for the Cold War. So what they needed was people that could be counted on, reliable people that followed orders, that was good at doing what they did. I mean, my father killed people. I have found out he was a guy that got things done. This is also one of the reasons I feel that I was very scared of him when I was a child. He never hit us or anything like that, but when he stared at me, oh my God, freaked me out. But anyway, so there was, especially now, it turns out that there were 3 different areas in Denmark where they were recruited from. It was from the resistance movement. It was from a jail called Vestre Fængsel, which is the West prison, and then from one prison camp in north of Germany. And the people, my grandfather was in that prison, the father of my mother, where I think that he donated his daughter into this network because she was beautiful. She was really good with many languages. She was a perfect honey trap that could be used for many different things. I think he very coldly donated her in, and then she was positioned together with my father. So my father was in the resistance movement, and the other people also were recruited secretly at the end of the Second World War, and then activated in the Cold War, in the beginning of the Cold War when NATO was created. I mean, these are very, very important years because it was exactly when, at the end of the Second World War, when the OSS turned into the CIA, and they did that with the help of people from Operation Paperclip, Nazis that was exported into the US, down into South America, and then with the help of like Colonel Reinhard Gehlen from the intelligence agency up there, and also with help of Gestapo, they reorganized OSS into what became the CIA, with Alan Dulles as the head. He was just a lawyer, he and his brother, John Foster. But these were key people in what then has happened to the world, including loads of assassinations, coups d'etats, you name it, key people. Okay, but also at the same time, you had the creation of the CDC, which nowadays is quite an interesting organization, if you ask me. It's a private organization, just like the Federal Reserve. It's not governmental at all. CDC, that was also created with Nazi scientists.
It's in
and
Atlanta,
the CDC,
Right.
Atlanta, Georgia. And that is where all the numbers comes from when pandemics are declared. When we followed everything that has to do with viruses, it's CDC. It's with a swing door into big pharma and these big chemical giants that are also based on the very same people. And the CDC is the place where all of these, many of the patents for like the Zika virus, the Ebola virus, these are patented man-made viruses owned by the CDC. And then there you go. My God, we have a pandemic. Absolute bullshit. It comes from there. So the CDC and the CIA has been in bed from day one when they do these operations. You have another one, the World Military Games. The World Military Games that was created at the same time. It's for people after they were blown to smithereens and in pieces, in these wars that was created by the same dark force. They almost like have this. It's like an Olympic but for people that have been blown to pieces, one-legged or one-armed or whatever. That was created at the same time, and this has also been going side by side in these operations. So when the coronavirus exploded, where did it explode? It exploded in Wuhan, China. At exactly that time, you had more than 10,000 NATO troops in Wuhan, China for the World Military Games. The whole idea was to release the virus. I don't even think anything was released, but I mean, the only thing that mattered was the fear virus to spread it globally. But anyway, so that the virus was supposed to be released there, the world would freak out, and then all of these 10,000 soldiers within 24 hours would go home to their home countries without knowing it, bringing the virus. So the World Military Games, very important organization also. And then in 49, NATO, the creation of NATO, where Denmark was one of the founding nations as well. So you have in these days, and you had the end of the Second World War when they dropped the two A bombs. I tell you, when you really look deep into what happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, this was not atomic weapons. These were napalm, carpet bombings of these areas. But the reason for these A bombs was to create this massive fear, so that they could create this illusion of a Cold War of two superpowers that both have these weapons of mass death. The thing that was important for them was to create the fear that could then create all of these. And in that whole thing was where they've been playing the world since then. Because if you look at the powers of the world, they work both sides of a war. They create the conflict, they fund both sides, they gain incredible amounts of power and land masses and minerals and oils and diamonds, whatever the war is about. Drugs, very often drugs and weapons, organs. It has very, very rarely are there any natural wars.
Yes, I
But
think
anyway,
that
so
Cold War was a total it was theater. I'll just call it theater because I don't think they wanted to stop getting funding after World War II ended. That war was generating so much money for this military industrial complex. It's like they needed something to replace World War II. So it's like they just fabricated most of
mm,
this stuff and they did it with Russia. Just happened to do it with Russia. I think you're dead on. And I like the
it
NATO connections here too, because you're showing how this organization NATO was created and how in the background of a lot of these false flag, big theatrical world stage events, NATO is there in the shadows, oftentimes being used for certain functions.
NATO is a tool of death. It is a tool of death. Death. Death is the name of the game. It's horrendous. And NATO, as so many other of these organizations, are created to solve the problems created by NATO. They create the problems to
Yes.
come in with a solution. It's problem, reaction, solution, this old Roman template. So it's with so many of these other organizations. They are created there to solve the problems that they create. There was no problem, and then this organization was created, and suddenly we have terrorism appears, or the Cold War appears, or this appears, or the United Nations. We have to unite. Why do we have to unite? The world was a beautiful place before, the First World War that was created by the same bankers. What is going on here? And then these organizations, it's the same with, I mean, very few international organizations on that level is not connected to the same little power structure. It's
Do you
not big.
do you think that World Economic Forum and Klaus
Oh,
Schwab is
God,
involved with
yeah.
this? Still,
God, yeah.
do you think that they're losing some power, or are they just kind of
I
hanging
really hope
back?
so. I
Yeah, I hope
hope
so.
so.
Yeah.
But I really hope so, because that is a very, very, very dangerous organization. And please understand, Klaus Schwab is just a player.
Yeah.
He is on a low scale. I mean, he's Dr. Evil. The only thing missing is the cat, the white cat. But otherwise than that,
Yeah.
he is not, the people he was dealing with was like Henry Kissinger. There's a real bad boy for you. George Bush Senior, not Boy George joke Senior, real monster, real heavyweight player, and yet they're still also they're players, but like Henry Kissinger, George Soros, Bush Senior, these type of individuals, very, very hard hitting players, and then you got like underneath you got individuals like Klaus Schwab. I mean, really, don't focus on him. He's just
Yeah.
a puppet. But the organization is scary as hell, because it's the same. The World Economic Forum has the exact same agenda as Agenda 21. Agenda 21, if you start looking into that, hell on earth for us. It's 1984 on steroids.
Yes.
And and so the World Economic Forum, they talk about the fourth industrial revolution. It's just the same, different name, same bullshit. And then, but the one that is really tricky with the World Economic Forum, I find, is what is called the Young Global Leaders. That is an organization underneath the World Economic Forum, and they have been uh, educating future leaders since the 1990s, including apparently Putin. I'm not sure about that, but according to Klaus Schwab, he's one of theirs. I'm not sure about Putin. He's a bit of a wild card in my world. I don't know. But most of the other leaders in Western countries, these young, including women, prime ministers, and oh my God, she's so
Justin
clever.
Trudeau.
Oh God, Trudeau is like massively, massively under that control.
Yeah.
But you got the leader of Finland, New Zealand, all of these NATO countries. Boom, 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 boom. World Economic Forum, very, very dangerous. Zelensky, the Ukraine, also, where so suddenly, instead of you having a conflict, oh my God, these two are fighting each other. No, they're members of the same club behind the scenes, member of the same club, just playing out a theater, which is a big black hole to pump in billions of dollars and weapons and all kinds of crap. Also, moving around super dangerous biolabs and stuff like that under the cover of. So, I mean, so many things happen when there is a war. So many things are going on under the surface that we don't see. We're looking at boom, boom. No, 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 no. The games is played behind us, around us. When it's like looking at David Copperfield. He says, "Oh, look over here." We look there. Oh my God, magic! A flower appeared. No, you have to see, check his other hand, check behind him, walk 360 around, and you will see it's not magic. That he chopped somebody, he took a chainsaw and cut somebody in two pieces. It's not magic. It's done somehow. We just have to figure it out. And this is what I've devoted my life to help break the spell of fear.
Yes. If we could go back to Putin for just a second, I think you said that he was slightly confusing, and I can see why, because I think I've heard almost conflicting stories. I don't know if they're conflicting, but I've heard that he was MI6 and that he was Russian intelligence. So that would make him a double agent if those were true.
Yeah. And I'm the one spreading this thing about him being MI6.
Yeah,
At
I
least
think I heard that from you.
I've only heard it from I've heard it from an MI6 agent, and I
Mhm.
can only say he could have been full of it. So I can't say
Okay.
that it's true. But this was way before Putin got in on the big scene that I heard that. He said that when he was being educated as a young agent in MI6 in, I think it was Wiltshire in England, they had like this almost like James Bond boot camp type of thing. One of the other agents was Vladimir Putin. So he got really confused when suddenly Putin appeared on that level, because he was just a low level agent
It
connected
wouldn't
to the MI6.
surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me because there is a long history of Europeans being sent over to Russia to be involved in their government and their politics.
We're back to the illusion. We're back
Yeah.
to the illusion of enemies. We think Russia and the US are deadly enemies. When you look behind the scenes, you will see a lot of them are connected. When you look at the Russian Revolution, it wasn't a Russian Revolution at all. It wasn't even a revolution. It was a military coup that took over, that knocked out the royal family or the Tsar's family in Russia and replaced them with their puppets. Lenin went to Stockholm before going there. He was backed by Swedish money, the Aschberg family, and set up to do this whole thing. And that led to Stalin, 20 million deaths, and Khrushchev, and all of these things. But it's the same bankers in the background, same families in the background that are just pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. And we're looking, like Shakespeare said, the whole world is a stage. We're looking at the stage. Or they have this phenomena, the old Greeks were saying, what we're looking at are the shadows from the fire. The fire is behind us. We're looking at the shadows of the wall, trying to manipulate, understand what's going on, when actually we should
Yes.
just turn around and look at the fire. That's what I'm saying. Don't buy into this. Don't buy into what you're being told. Now we're being bombarded with information all over the place. This is happening. This is happening. This is happening. Now we find out more and more. No, it's AI generated footage. No, it's this setup. It's a stage thing. Where actually we should say, wait a second, and then turn around. It's Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Stop, breathe, take a walk, slow down. Don't get scared. And then let's see if we can maybe pull this curtain. This is what I dedicate in my life, is to make this curtain transparent so you can see behind this illusion of fear and see, my God, we're living in such a beautiful place. It is not hell on earth. It is beautiful, absolutely stunning. I mean, look at a flower, look at a butterfly. Try and figure that one out. I mean, we don't even understand how a flower, what makes it alive or any, but instead we're so focused on what is coming through us, to us through screens,
Yes.
either in the form of TV screens, many of them now labeled smart, where actually it's the wrong spelling. It should be EVIL is the correct spelling of these screens, and or laptops or phones, all of them digital information so easily manipulated. And what are these screens telling us all the time? Life is hell, life is horrible, your enemy is over there, you should be scared, you should be afraid, you should accept more and more control. You should, for your protection, you should give up your rights. You should, because all of that, it comes through screens. So we look at the screen, life is hell. You look out through the window, it's absolutely stunning. The choice is yours. I prefer to look at the world as stunning and then detach emotionally and go into this area of so-called conspiracies and pull the curtain, but keep the inner balance.
Because there's always a psyop going on. There's always going to be riffraff in the world. These power players that you've alluded to today, they're always in the background scheming and trying to pull off. They're trying to gain more power and do various other things. But I like what you're saying, and I'm not a black pill person either. I do have hope. And but I also see what you're saying, where to go into this type of research, it's healthier to kind of detach from yourself emotionally.
I I've been in this deeper than more or less anyone I
Yeah.
know. I've been more scared than more or less anyone I know. I've been, yeah,
Hmm.
physically on location. I'm not just one of these sitting, behind a screen or reading a book, pointing. I go on location.
Yeah.
Very scary at times. Also because I'm a one-man band. So but at the same time, that is also where I've understood that, oh my God, this is just not true. It's, you're being presented something in a documentary or in a news feed or whatever. It looks so real. You go on location, it's like, what the hell? This doesn't make any sense at all. How, what? And then you start looking and it's just like, oh my God. And that's how I started learning what was actually going on. And also, I was dead broke. Many years ago, we moved countries to Spain because it was getting a bit too intense in Sweden for me, among other reasons. And I was hired as an extra for a Swedish company on the island of Mallorca, a film company. So I was doing everything. I was desperate for money, so I was really trying to make myself as good as possible so that they would hire me. So I was trying to learn everything about how they set up the lighting, the cables, the electric, the background, anything just for hire me, hire me, hire me. But the jobs I got was as an extra because I looked Northern European. That was normally their clients. So that was perfect for me. And that was the thing that got me into the area of seeing how these things were set up for a film. Most of the time it was commercials, but you had like cue point markers and stuff like that, and the lighting to avoid the shadows and stuff. And then I started seeing here like Charlie Hebdo attack here, and then they were like, when you see the the terrorists running around with machine guns, you can see that they follow the queue markers. They made the marks on the road. I was like, whoa, 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 what the hell is that? And they had made markings for where the car should stop, and then you start seeing the lighting. Oh my God, there's two shadows meaning they're spotlights. What the hell? This happened. And these are the things that got me into the area of seeing through many of these things. Because
We're
for them,
talking about staged events.
we're talking about staged events, exactly. Because uh, when you look at how the world is run or how we are being ruled, it's through fear.
Yes.
It's all the time through fear. It's the only weapon they have against us is to keep us fearful. So how do they keep us fearful? They need something out there saying woof woof, to scare us, something out there. This is an old Roman template. So if there isn't an outer threat or they can't point at anyone out there, then they create it themselves.
Yeah.
And in a stage you have like woof woof, like Al Qaeda that was then upgraded to ISIS, then was then upgraded to ISIL, then was then to Daesh, then was then upgraded to IS, and then it's the same woof woof, and you'll
Yeah.
see it's their creation, their
Yeah.
creation,
Well, what about events
and
like, not to derail you there, but like I'm just thinking of examples maybe that we could give to people. One came to
mm,
mind for me that'd be like maybe the Las Vegas shooting or the Uvalde shooting, Maui. I'm just thinking of some stuff in recent years too. I mean, of course, if we're going back to, we talked about the CDC and this pandemic, scamdemic, there was a operation out of the hospital there in Boston, right? Where they ran a sort of what would you call it? It's almost like a maneuver. They ran some sort of an operation right before the pandemic in Boston. So
Event 201.
201, thank you. So that's, I just want to throw out some examples here where
Okay,
you
so
have,
what you
go
what
ahead.
you're talking about are three extremely big ones.
Hmm.
We are looking at many, 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 many small ones. If you go to my website, Light on Conspiracies, plural, lightonconspiracies.com or dammegård.com, I've been interviewed more than 1,300 times about operations like this, where many times I break them down in extreme detail so that you can see for yourself. I never try to push it on anyone, but I try to point out, please look here, look here, look here, look here. In my newsletter as well, I have a monthly newsletter where I just break it down extremely well and also predict the upcoming one because they actually leave hidden clues in the forensic evidence on purpose. We can come back to that one. That is mind blowing. But anyway, so you said the Las Vegas mass shooting. The Las Vegas mass shooting is a very different operation. I'm still confused about that one. The official narrative, absolute not a true word at all. But there seem to have been multiple things going on, multiple operations. It's a multi-layered event. that took place that day. So that one, I can only say, official narrative, absolute bullshit. It was an extreme multi-layered false flag operation. Multi-layered. Like I said, after I'm still confused to a certain extent.
Can I add something here? I
Yeah,
think that was in 2017. We
yeah.
talked before the show. I told you where I live. I'm in Nashville. My roommate in 2017 worked for Jason Aldean. He was at the Harvest Festival.
Mm.
So I was one of the first people he talked to when he got back. Of course, he was traumatized. And I'm not going to go too far into that because it's his story. I don't want to speak for him. But I will say this. He talked about, let's just say this. It sounded like to him on the ground, it sounded like more than just one person shooting a gun, for sure. He, I think he said something like he felt like they were being fired upon. And again, I don't want to speak for him, but he had to get underneath the stage. That's how he survived that event. And it is, I agree, it's a weird one.
It is a very weird one. A lot of the footage you see from that thing were footage from a drill. It's not the real thing. You can also see we're being told that Stephen Paddock was up in this room firing all of these shots. It's if you listen to the sounds, everything like that, it's not even real weapons. Like you don't have a weapon go do 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 do. That's not an automatic gunfire at all. The things that we've been shown, a lot of the footage is not from the real event. The real event took place, and there were multiple shooters around the whole thing, including a helicopter with a machine gun firing down into the crowd. Why on earth they did that? I believe that it is extremely dark, that it's part of human hunting, where you have on a very elite level. Once these billionaires are getting bored with getting another yacht that is like 5 inches longer than the neighboring yacht or whatever, and they hunted the big five, and they have five wives, and they have the big, the thing with these extremely rich, many psychopaths, they're bored. They're
Yeah, like
bored.
they need a new thrill.
They need a new thrill. And this is where the so-called Illuminati card game comes in, I believe. And in the Illuminati card game, where the last edition was printed in 1995, you have many of these events are there, like predicting. But I believe that it either, I mean, that predicted exactly where the Twin Towers, where the explosions hit, the Pentagon hit, the death of Diana, the alleged assassination attempt on Donald Trump, so many, the COVID thing, all of these cards are there, printed in 1995. How is that possible? And I believe when you look at the rules of that game, it's a very, very bizarre game, the Illuminati card game. It's about world domination. And the thing there is like when you see how it's being played, it's almost like if you look at the movie Squid Games or Hunger Games, like you have an elite group that are betting on different people to survive.
Yes.
And here, I believe to play a card in the Illuminati card, they have to put down what is called MB, which is megabucks. Megabucks for us, maybe for you and I, would be like a couple of $1,000. For these people, maybe we're talking billions or stuff. And I'm speculating, but I've been backed by some people in psyops and stuff. I've done shows together with them where I presented this idea saying, is it possible that there is behind the scenes this group that are playing for world domination as a game, a high thrill game, high stake game, where they pay megabucks to play that card, and then that event has to be played out in real life. So it's not that they can predict, it's that the card is being played and then it happens. Because also the one that from the Las Vegas mass shooting, there's one really interesting thing is that card has the tattoo of your dear friend Jason Aldean.
Right.
The one he has on his arm, that's on the card. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he It would
Well,
be
okay,
very interesting.
I don't know. Just for the record, I actually don't know Jason Aldean very well. My
Well,
roommate worked for him, and that's the
what
only
I'm,
connection there. So, and because I've seen that card too, and he is, how these celebs are. They're strangely interwoven into some of these events.
And I mean, he might even be aware of that when he got that tattoo. It would be interesting to find out where did he get it? Who suggested it? Was it just him? Did it come in a dream? Was it forced on him? Was it, yeah, if you sign this record deal, but please, you need to have this tattoo because it's good for promotion. I don't know. It would be very interesting because that exact tattoo that he has is on that card printed in 1995. Just saying. So, with the Las Vegas one, very, very bizarre. The whole Stephen Paddock, absolute bullshit. Nothing, not a true word there. But there seem to have been multiple shooters firing from different direction on top of the pyramid, from the helicopter, especially where there's a company in Las Vegas where normally you can go out and shoot out in the desert, like with big heavy machine guns, like pop, 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 pop. But here it was used against the audience. And then you have what is called death pool betting, which is becoming big in gaming, where you bet on when someone will die.
Hmm.
It's very bizarre, but you can, like, the younger they are, the higher the odds. And it's often with celebrities, like, okay, he's in his 80s. If you bet he's gonna die on the 18th of August, and then he dies on the 18th of August, you get like this. But if he's 32 and you say he's gonna die on the 18th of August, then the stakes are a lot. Do you see what I'm saying? The
Yeah,
odds are
yeah.
a lot.
So if you think
So
about this, or the way I'm thinking about this, as you're talking, I'm kind of thinking about those old Bilderberg group meetings, and which, I guess they've moved those and they're out of the public view again, perhaps. But where I'm thinking about the people who go to those, and I'm thinking if there is a group of elites playing this Hunger Games card game, just playing these games for thrills, I think it would be a small percentage of some of the people in the room at the Bilderberger group, right? It's like a
we we're talking the Bilderberg group is just another layer. They're
sure.
very important. I've been one of the speakers outside the Bilderberg meeting. I've been part of stopping a staged terror attack that was supposed to be turned against the truth movement outside a Bilderberg meeting. The Bilderberg group is very, very central. The Bilderberg group, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Club of Rome, the Committee of 300. These people, they're intergrown like this. Many people are members of the same or more than one. So super important organizations, very, very dark. I mean, you think that elections are the thing that decides about your future? No, if you look at what's going on at these meetings, that's where it actually happens.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I. But it's
I just had
we're talking.
the feeling that it was a
Yeah, yeah.
small amount of people.
It is. It's a very small. We're talking about a
Yeah.
small. This is the good news. The people that are messing with us are so few. We are so many. They're in the thousands. We are in the billions. I mean, if you know anything about mathematics, thousands, billions, it's like I heard one guy, he said, if you look at the so-called elite, I mean, I have other names for them that is not so flattering, but anyway, and you see a long, beautiful sandy beach, they would be one grain of sand, and we are the beach. And we are letting them control us. It is an absolute joke and disgrace. Come on, folks. What the hell? Wake up, get some fire in the butt, and stand up in truth. But otherwise than that, you also have drone strikes.
Yes.
I want to bring that in here now because we have innocent countries, poor, really poor, innocent countries. For instance, Afghanistan. Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, both of them are based on 9/11. You look at 9/11, was there any Afghanis involved at all, even in the official narrative? Absolutely zero. What on earth? No, but bin Laden was, yeah, no, he was a Saudi. Yeah. and also a CIA operative. This is the whole thing. When you start seeing this whole 9/11 complete inside job, backing with Saudi money and Israel massively involved. I'm not talking
Doesn't
about Israel as a country, but
yeah.
Israel as a power structure, like a gross cancer growth of terror. Terrorism comes from Israel, from that land piece that was created, the Balfour
47.
Agreement, whatever. Yeah, exactly. But it's the Rothschild, the whole elite structure that has just made this whole thing. But back to Las Vegas. Okay, so you have after the war in Afghanistan stopped, you still have thousands of drone strikes every year. What the hell are they firing at? And here comes back to the Hunger Games, back to live targets, human hunting, because also there's these parties where more and more information is coming out, where they, instead of hunting deer or hunting fox, they're getting bored with that. They hunt people. People are being let loose and chased and killed. This unfortunate, it's very, very dark. I'm very sorry to talk about these things, and it's really awful, but it seems like it's the ultimate thrill.
Yeah.
And so we have these drone strikes, thousands of them. What are they? And here also I've been tracing back. It is people playing computer games, but with live targets. They pay a massive fee and they come in and they can fire on live targets safely from their home. The only thing they need is online access, a big fat cigar, and then let the killing begin. It's
Yeah,
awful,
it's grim. It's very grim. What about
very
the
grim.
an element of
Can
I
I
was, yeah, finish. Go for it.
Okay, so you split it up in three topics. So I don't know if you want to stay with this or we move on to the other ones because they're big ones, all three of them.
Okay, yo, let's just keep going. I was just going to say, and you can answer this later if you want. I was just wondering if you think there's a supernatural element to this as well, where you have, you know, humanity versus fallen angels, perhaps, and there's a darker force meddling with human affairs. Does that fit into this for you?
It does, but I don't understand it.
That would be
I
over our heads, right? Because they're playing a game on another level. They're possibly not even using mathematics or time in our terms.
I I'm I very early on this when I started speaking about UFOs or alien or stuff like I saw that people's eyes just went like you know,
Yeah.
they lost interest and they were, yeah, yeah, they were zooming out. So I thought I need to stick to one topic where I can prove instead of speculating. If I want to make a difference, I need to become like a light right on target, not go everywhere else, not talk about this. So I decided to avoid UFOs. I'm not saying that they exist or not exist, but I was very much on a street level. That's where I focused, and I've become an expert because I focus instead of like most people when you talk about in the conspiracy world, they're all over the place. And I'm not saying they're not right. I'm just saying that for somebody listening to it, so it's sort of
Okay.
like,
That answers
but
my question, and I
no, but it
understand
does
that.
not. If I
Okay,
can please continue, because
please.
I think that you're spot on. Because on a street level, it's one thing. You got all of these operatives and black ops and all kinds of stuff, military maneuvers going on. But then on a higher level, on a spiritual level, it is almost like it is between good and evil, these two forces, this plus and minus in this matrix, whatever it is we're living in. And then when you talk about, I mean, the people that are carrying out a lot of this dark stuff, they're actually worshiping not the guy up in the clouds with a big white beard. They really, really like the guy that eats with a fork and got a red complexion and a couple of horns. You have in Hollywood, you have in the music business, you have in sports, they're saying the same thing. They signed a deal with this guy. They
Mhm.
signed their soul to this guy. Not my words, their words. So there, what is the devil? What is it a fallen angel like Lucifer, or is it an entity, or is it just an energy source? I don't know. But I to simplify what we're up against, I think we're up against pure evil, and it just manifests through people, corrupt people that are where their mindset is so corrupt that they let this force get into them. The native Indians call it the wetiko, the mind virus. If you're not healed, if you're not whole, this virus will just find its crack and get in and then start messing around with you. And with these individuals, very often traumatized from a young, early childhood or born psychopath, they are the perfect ones to take over that very dark, sinister mindset where they don't care. And it's like, uh, do as thy will. Just do it. Don't care about who's ever in the receiving end or whatever. You just do. And that's where the actions are. There's no compassion, no caring. But that's also the setup of a psychopath. They don't have the ability to feel compassion. They can't feel empathy. They just can't. So you can't blame them. You can blame us for letting them get into all of these power positions where we're too busy eating another slice of pizza and changing channels while they're moving in and just taking over. That it's our responsibility. And it's also our responsibility to take that power back.
And speaking of Las Vegas, and in other events like this, I've seen where researchers come in and they really, really get deep into the event itself and they look at all the news articles and news reels and they start to find that there is almost like a code. There's numbers that keep popping up. It's almost like somebody or something in this case has planned ahead and encoded certain numbers into these events. And it's like, at some point you sit back and you say, I don't think a human could have done this.
It's a standard procedure in these operations. The numerology, the
Yes.
dates, the location, the name of the victims, the name of the streets are interactive in this. Why it's so important to them, I know from a like a satanic point of view why it's so, but these rituals are super important for them. So it's not a coincidence that these numbers come up, and it's the same numbers again and again and again. I mean, the most classical one is 666,
Hmm.
but you got like 33 or 13 or 911 or 711. These numbers are just over and over and over again, and it's sort of like even if you take, for instance, the name of alleged victims and you do it in a numerology way, it almost comes out to 33 every single time. 33, 33, 33, 33, 33. And it's like the dates as well. I mean, I know that every single year, no, they're going to hit on that date, they're going to hit on that date, they're going to hit on that date. Like now here we have for Christmas every single year when people are finally coming to a place where, oh my God, we can enjoy ourselves, we can relax a little bit, we can let go of the stress, and in comes like a parcel coming on the post, boom. For countries that are celebrating on the 24th, just a few days before, you will have some kind of terror attack, car attack, truck attack, something that is connected to Christmas, the Christmas theme, Christmas market attack, Christmas this or that. Or in the US, you go for a mass shooting, and it will be closer to the date of the 25th where you celebrate, and it will be connected to Christmas. So here, one thing they hate, they feel, it feels to me like they hate Christmas, or it comes from Christianity, I think it, or Christ. So Santa is indirectly Satan, the way they use the word. So if you look at the headlines, there's a lot of with Santa, 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 but actually it's the way they use it. And then, for instance, now you had this alleged a mass shooting in the US where a
Yes.
15-year-old girl did this. Okay, so her name was Samantha. That is, if you're in Spanish, Samantha, Santa, or Semana Santa, or Samantha is very close to Santa. You have to go on a subconscious level. But she also went under the name of Natalie. If you look at the Latin meaning of the name Natalie, it means Christmas Day, the name itself. And then you had the photos of the victims was from Sandy Hook. They're recycling this crap. It's not even happening nowadays. It's in media because we're being so pumped. Boom, boom, boom. Then, oh my God, New Orleans. Oh, now mass shooting there. And that's not, what I can guarantee you is there will never be two attacks on the same day. Never, ever, Never ever any close, not nearby, because they do it here, then there, then there, then there, then there, because it's a matter of spreading it out to affect as many people as possible. And in Europe and other NATO countries, NATO. And we're back to Gladio. Who is carrying out these operations? The exact same organization my father and mother was part of creating as a defense mechanism for Denmark in the early 50s, 60s. My dad was apparently paid by the CIA to the day he died in 1992. I had no idea. My mother, who helped me translate my books about Stay Behind, never said a word. They took it with them into the grave. I'm still, me of all people should have seen it. Nope.
Well,
Right in my face.
back to and I brought up the supernatural, so I'm going to toss this in here. When you were telling me your story earlier, you said that you had a dream, I believe, and the phrase came to you, and it was the key is in the ring, I believe.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that feels like something was giving you a clue, something higher, perhaps, was cluing you in because you are such a voracious researcher and investigator. It's like something supernatural almost gave you this little nugget and clued you into this whole other world. And it's almost as if you were kind of born into this for some sort of a purpose.
Tim, I tell you, I think I still haven't understood what the key is.
Mm.
That phrase, I think, is so important, and I'm still trying to figure it out. Yes, the key is in the ring, but what is in the ring was the key that he was connected to U.S. Air Force and Gladio. Is that the key? But there's also in the ring, I didn't mention, there's an amethyst, a purple amethyst in the ring. Okay, so I've looked at all there's this year book of rings for the American Air Force. Every year there's a new edition, as I believe. So I've tried to find what year my father's ring was, but it's so worn, so it's hard to see. But it seems that it's like late 40s, early 50s. I'm guessing somewhere around there. But the stone, the purple amethyst, in every year is connected to aristocracy or royalty. That is what that symbolizes. In my understanding of my life, I come from a line of farmers or like a local doctor. There's no royalty, but then the more I look into it, I'm getting closer and closer to the Danish royal family. Like my grandfather's father was the carpenter for the castle. I had one aunt, great 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 aunt, that used to go and have tea with the Danish prince. Whatever having tea with the Danish prince in those days meant, I think maybe they were doing hanky panky or whatever you want to call it. And I believed that it seemed like in the home of my mother's aunties, the sisters of my grandfather, they had like gifts from the royal castle. Like they had chairs with the emblem C4, which was Christian the Fourth, in their house. I mean, where did they come from? They had this chandelier from the French Revolution with a hand blown glass of ruby, stuff like that, from the French Revolution that was given by the prince when this woman had tea with him. I think he was his mistress. Yeah. She was his mistress. And I think that there's a possibility that a bastard child was born there, and that the royal family, this was not uncommon in those days, it's still not, but outside in those days, it was like you couldn't even mention them, but they also took care of these bastard children. Because there's one thing with me, Tim, is that when I look at, and I've had this question so many times, if what you say is true, how come you're still alive? And I tell you, I've been shot, I've been almost hit by cars, I've been really, I mean, but other people that can see angels said I'm surrounded by them. I don't know how, but I shouldn't be around. Many, many people have died for a lot less than I have. So it seems Then I spoke to a former black op, Cody Snodgrass. He was a black op under the CIA for more than 20 years. And he said that I was a no-go, a no-touch individual. Otherwise, I would have been taken out. There's something that protects me. And then one time he was also the guy that told me about my parents because like when I described my parents, he said, "Your dad was a spook, I can guarantee you, and so was your mom." I was in absolute shock, I tell you. Especially when he said my mom also. He said, "I guarantee you." And then I started looking into it more and more and more, and boom, there you go. But anyway, he said, "There's something protecting you. There's something." And then when I mentioned these things with the royalty, he was the guy that said that I'm sure a bastard child, and you're somehow in the bloodlines that
Bloodline.
yeah, you're a no-go. They cannot. They would love to take you out. They are not allowed. And I mean, I have no idea. I'm just happy to be around. But so
Yeah.
there's some. So I think the key is in the ring. I think I've only scratched on the surface of understanding what's in that phrase, but it sounds like a film title almost.
Yeah. Yes.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you? The Lord of the Ring. Do you know about the? Are you well informed about that whole story?
Somewhat. Yeah.
So what does the ring symbolize?
Ooh, well, it has been a while since I've seen the movie, but I just remember it has supernatural powers, and I don't remember the rest, unfortunately. I
Yeah.
do know that
Yeah.
it comes out of. I know that Tolkien was very into Finnish Kalevala folklore when he wrote that. So ingrained in that story and that plot points back to all these old myths and legends from Sweden, Norway, and Scandinavia. So there's a lot of old
And
magic folklore involved with that story.
But I tell you a lot more than that. As far as I know, Tolkien was also working for the MI6 in the Second World War, and that he was exposing the elite through that book, but in a symbolic way. And one of the families he
Mm,
was really exposing was a family that I've been breathing down their neck for some years now. It's a Swedish family that I believe are above the Rockefellers, above the Rothschilds, and are absolutely unknown more or less up until now. The name of the family is Wallenberg, Wallenberg,
yes.
Wallenberg, and their motto is ruling without visibility. And
Mm,
that is, I tell you, they are incredibly powerful and completely invisible. But
mhm.
that one is, and in the Lord of the Ring, he's pointing towards them. He's pointing toward, like you say, there's a lot of it that is referring to Sweden and also the whole setup there. I think he was based in Scandinavia during the Second World War. I'm not completely sure, but
Yeah, and
yeah,
that family, the Wallenberg family, has come up on here before. I was telling you,
I have.
I have a friend or somebody I talk to occasionally who's in Sweden, and that family came up on an episode I did with this guy. And here's the thing, I wanted to do an episode about that family, and it hasn't worked out yet. And I'm perhaps maybe he didn't want to do the episode because he's still there in that country, which I would totally understand if he doesn't want to bring any attention to himself and endanger his family. So, but I've heard about that family. I think they own Ericsson and they have their hands on a lot of other important things.
They own all the patents that are the basic structure for the internet.
Yes.
It's that all of the intelligence agencies with all the surveillance are relying on the structure of the internet. All the patents that are creating that is owned by Ericsson, which is their company. And they have, I think it's more than 6,000 patents of the key things that controls that whole thing. So all of the intelligence agencies are hiring their services. It's on a scale. Also, the encryption comes from the Wallenberg family. They're involved in so many. They're controlling the electricity in more than 180 countries. They are
What about CERN? Are they involved with CERN,
that I
perhaps?
don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know. I don't know. Never
Okay.
heard any connections with that. But there is one very interesting thing with so-called neutral countries. You only got two neutral countries, or what used to be so-called neutral, Switzerland and Sweden. Switzerland used it to hide all the gold from the and the blood diamonds and all of these things from horrible wars all over the world, in the bank safes, and made a fortune. And the reason why Switzerland is so wealthy comes from that. That's hiding under this neutral. We're neutral. And then Sweden. Sweden, I tell you, I grew up there. I was born in Denmark, grew up in Sweden. I thought it was we were being told this is the perfect white island, no violence, no nothing. Yes, the rest of the world have problems, not us. It is the most beautiful, pristine country ever. And then I started finding out because when I started digging into the alleged assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister, Olof Palme, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I tell you, I would now start pointing to possibly the center of the deep state comes straight from there. And so much of this horrendous technology that is now controlling us more and more comes exactly from Sweden. So many of these vaccines, so many of these chipping things, so many of the cashless society, so many Sweden, 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 Sweden. The same structure. It's not the Sweden as a country. It's the hiding behind this cover. Oh, ABBA, oh, Björn Borg, oh, beautiful women, oh, sex, Swedish sex. This whole thing. Behind that, that's where the dark, dark, dark thing. So they're hiding behind this neutrality. They have one of the most advanced military technology industries in Sweden while being neutral. What the hell? I mean, are you not supposed to? Yeah, but we only sell to countries that are not at war yet. It's like they're selling, oh God, double
There's
standards
something
on
to that.
steroids.
There's something to that neutrality thing. I'm with you 100%. And I think this family the Wallenbergs had these deals worked out with the Nazis even as well, all the way back. It probably just goes back centuries actually, but I think that they had they controlled like heavy water, and the Nazis were getting their heavy water
Yeah.
from them to make
Do,
bombs.
do you know who their lawyer was? The Wallenberg family's lawyer?
No.
Alan Dulles.
Oh my gosh.
Alan Dulles. And the Bush
Wow.
family. Yeah. And so when the Second World War, I mean, they created first, the First World War was created, and the Russian Revolution with Swedish banking money from the Ashberg family and stuff, where they backed Lenin, where you had different Swedish families that was creating this whole communism thing, starting the parties of communism and all of these things. There to it was a coup. It was an absolute coup. It was not a revolution at all. Anyway, so then they forced Germany into, I mean, if ask anyone what was the First World War about, they said it was because this Duke of somewhere was shot dead. So did that create a world war? What? It doesn't make any
Doesn't make
sense
any
whatsoever.
sense.
I don't understand it. I've been around many of these places, where they were in the trenches and all of these. I've been on location many. I still don't understand it at all, at all. What was it
Yeah.
about? But then Germany was forced down to their knees and forced to sign this peace agreement that just pushed them into the Second World War. Who was
Treaty of
there when
Versailles.
yeah, who was there when they signed it? Alan Dulles was one of them.
Hmm.
Anyway, so the Second World War, how was that created? There was suddenly money came from somewhere. Where was the money coming from? Prescott Bush, the father of George Bush Sr., also the grandfather or the father of Prescott Bush was the guy that was behind the so-called Zimmerman telegram that got the U.S. into the First World War. From the same Bush family, boom, got the U.S. in there. Then the Second World War, Prescott Bush was pumping in the funds into the Hitler war machine. Okay, so who were the lawyers for Hitler? Alan Dulles, John Foster Dulles were there. Do you see? But they were working under the Wallenberg family before, and then they were borrowed out. This whole thing, I tell you, was created in a way that it's just unbelievable. And you see the same key people, boom, 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 unbelievable, right in front of our eyes, and we don't see it. We don't see the connection.
Yeah, and back to the Wallenbergs, I was talking with this fellow I know, and we were talking about the Nazis, and he said a lot of that Nazi ideology came out of Sweden as well.
Yeah.
A
I
lot
mean,
of like,
Sweden was super Nazi
mm,
until the war changed. Suddenly,
hmm.
yeah, everybody was going around, yes sir, no sir, Sieg Heil, or Sieg Schicklgruber. I mean, that was Hitler's real name, but and then they decided, wait a second, maybe we would earn more if we turn it around like this. It's a chess game. Like they were on both sides. So chess game, and then they decided who's gonna be the winner, who's gonna be the loser, and they decided let's just crash uh, Germany once again. Then you had Stalin, Churchill, Roosevelt met in Yalta. That's where they decided we're gonna split the world like this between us. I'm sorry, I just have to open the door.
That's
Very
okay.
sorry.
Go ahead. That's okay. I paused it, so we're good. We're back.
Excellent. So, where were we? Yeah, it's just refresh my mind.
Oh yeah, well we were talking about Dulles brothers being
Mm.
the lawyers, and I think we were getting
So,
to go ahead.
okay, no, so we got the whole Second World War going, and then yeah, the conference in Yalta where they met, and Chiang Kai-shek was there, also from China. This whole or from the Southeast Asia, which is not officially. But anyway, at that place, they decided, I think, we're going to split the world in a new way. We're going to create a Cold War, but we need a patsy. We need someone to be blamed for everything. Because when you look at the actions during the Second World War, the Germans were not the only ones that were doing horrendous stuff. I mean, carpet bombing over civilian cities like in Germany and stuff like that. When you look at where Churchill came from and what he was responsible, we're talking mass murder on an incredible level. Stalin, mass murder, mass murder. Were anyone ever, and the American soldiers, I mean, they weren't just babies coming around playing around tootsie footsie. But who would charge with war crimes? The only ones that could be tried for war crimes were Germans in Nuremberg. And so they took a handful of people there, put them there as patsies, I would say more or less, saying, "You bad boys, you've done that." And then they created the whole scenario of of the death camps. This is a whole different one. Now we're coming into the Holocaust, which I'm telling you, if you want to commit suicide publicly, that's the way to go. I'd be happy to speak about it, but that is a no, no, no. This is the ultimate thing that you cannot touch.
Hmm.
But that whole thing was set up also, completely constructed to blame the Germans. They're still under this massive mountain of guilt to this very day, and free the West so that they could continue, including Russia or Stalin, so that the whole first Cold War could be started with the same players in the background. So, who was key in the Cold War? Alan Dulles.
Hmm.
Who was key in taking out JFK in the early 60s? Alan Dulles. Who was key, we're talking a small little group of people, and very, very cold people that were just very good at what they were doing. And they just took out one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And it's just continued. It's the same power structure to this very day.
And I know that Dulles and Eisenhower and Edward Bernays in the 50s were releasing this wave of propaganda over here. And they did that 1954 Guatemala coup d'etat. They had their hands in all kinds of,
Oh
they
God, it was.
completely fabricated that and made that look like they were the good guys when they were the instigators.
All of the coup d'etats in South America, as far as I know, in the Middle East are CIA. You got MI6 on a corner sometimes, but most of the time it's just CIA.
Yeah.
It's it's an agency for hire, and it's big multinational corporations like Heinz and United Fruit and these type of they rent this agency, and so the agency moves in and removes obstacles for business in the form of precedents, in the form of whatever it takes. They just go in and do the dirty business, and boom, in the form of it could be military attacks, it could be coup d'etats, or it could be that they send in like economic hitmen to do the business. It's just or through the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, which is another brutal, brutal tools of the same elite. Brutal. World Bank, fuck them. Sorry, my French, I don't know if that made sense, but I would just
Yeah.
like to say, fuck them. Horrible, horrible, horrible organization. And the International Monetary Fund is just as bad. It's it's the way they have raped countries in such an disgusting way is just unbelievable. And we stand and celebrate them. Oh, he's the director of the World Bank. You should like, holy what? No. But it's just another of these tools that they're using.
Mm-hmm. And in my research, I've found, and I know everything tends to go back further than we know, but I do go back to 1947 and the creation of the CIA. Of course, it was OSS before, but I look at that year and a lot of changes were made in that year that affect us today. And then I look at Eisenhower and 1954 and his collaboration with Dulles and a lot of the stuff that they unleashed in 54. And I do see that those years directly after 1947 as very key years. Um, and when you really dig in deep and you see what they were doing and what they were up to, you can see how it changed things that affect us today. And there's a future project I'm kind of working on. It's a script for a documentary that touches on the Eisenhower years and all of that. But I was wondering if you could touch on Operation 40. Do you think
Ooh,
that fits
ooh,
into
ooh.
this?
Oh yeah, big time, big time, big time. Thank you so much for bringing it up. This is one group of assassins that I've spent a major part of my life exposing. It did not used to be very well known. And anyway, I've done my utmost to get it out there because this is key, absolute key in this whole thing. So, uh, Operation 40. Yeah, if I can answer first and then come to Operation 40, please remind me. Okay, so in 1954 is a very interesting year for myself personally, because my dad, he when I look back, he seems to have disappeared after the Second World War. There's very little knowledge of where he was. When I look back into the archives, the files, he just stops existing, just like the other five people that I'm tracking down. And 100 Danes were at that time sent to the States, to Fort Benning, special ops, special school of assassins, that whole thing. And I believe my father was one of them. I believe these five. I've tried to get documents out about the names, but it will break the law of espionage or whatever. You cannot get the names of them. But my dad disappears, and then he appears again around 1954-55 in Denmark. And that is where this underground base is also created. It's like 2 kilometers of tunnels, 22 meters below ground. I've been down there. And I believe that is also where my parents actually met and was put together as a couple. But in 1954, also, you had Gladio. I want to explain what Gladio was to start with. It was, I tell you, a phenomenal idea, I think. The idea was to have a secret, almost like Dad's army, but not really. I mean, but highly skilled military people with military knowledge, weapon knowledge, former security, former police officers, former military, former whatever. in a super secret network consisting of hundreds of small cells of 6 to 8 people normally. These different groups did not know about each other. They were completely separate, but they were connected through radio activity, or that they could only connect with radio. All code names. Nobody knew the bigger picture. That was key. And all groups had underground stashes, caches of weapons, weapons, mines, food, telecommunication, maps, anything needed in a situation of crisis. And then these groups were strategically, in peacetime, strategically positioned everywhere in the country, so that should an invasion come from the east in those days, from the east, any NATO country that would be invaded, with one phone call, the idea was that the head of the state, or the prime minister, the royalties, whatever, they would bugger off, go to England, and then from London, the MI6 headquarters, more or less activate the whole hidden army, ghost army, with one phone call. Activate, boom. All of them would come up like mushrooms out of nowhere, fully armed, fully equipped, fully behind the scenes, the enemy lines behind. When you look at it, I think it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, because wow. And then if you have that in all the different countries, you can activate all of them, boom, and they're perfectly positioned. Like my father was given the job as head of Esso, which is Statoil, which is Rockefeller, of more or less half of Copenhagen, all the Esso gas stations. If you look at these gas stations, perfectly positioned from a strategic point of view in a situation of crisis, intersections where they, entrance into airports, entrance into all the key position, there's a gas station. Boom, 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 boom. So what I remember when I was a child, we were driving around to these gas stations, and all of the people that I remember were former members of the Danish resistance movement during the occupation. These were former warriors that just happened to now work at a gas station. A gas station is also a perfect place, because when you build a gas station, you have big bulldozers and diggers coming there, and they bury these tanks, and you say, okay, that's for diesel, that's for gasoline, that's for weapons, maybe. Do you see? So you can have these perfect weapon stash or whatever is needed in one of these underground things. So suddenly, I'm the only one pointing this out in Denmark, but I tell you, my dad was so heavily involved, and his position was perfect to control Gladio in that whole thing. And like I said, I've had it confirmed now also, so it's not speculation on my part. I wish, it's a big emotional trauma in my life and my siblings' life also, because it just shows that we didn't know our parents, Anyway, so in 1954, from something that was really good, on stage came what the CIA called the strategy of tension. The strategy of tension was that when the Cold War sort of was not so dangerous anymore, they needed to amp up fear. Once again, we're talking fear. So especially in certain countries that was soft lefties, soft humanistic type of thing, they did not like that at all. So what they decided was to inflict random violence to the society. It needed to be random violence, because if it's random, then it affects everyone. Everyone will get afraid. So that's why they started using these warriors that just followed orders and they were without a job. So they said, why are we not using them for something that would serve us? So that's when the mass shooting started in supermarkets. They started blowing up train stations. This has gone on. And also they started creating these so-called terrorist group, like the Baader-Meinhof group, the Red Army group, the Christian Clark group. They're backed by Gladio. And many, many assassinations carried out, Gladio. Coup d'etats, Gladio. To this very day, I tell you, gladios all over the map, all over. That is why I now, one generation later, is devoting my life to exposing this horror. And every single time, I should be the world's biggest expert on ISIS. I know nothing about them. I know about Gladio because that is what I encountered over and over and over and over again. NATO's Ghost Army, Gladio, they are the tools that carry out more or less all the alleged mass shootings, all the alleged terror attacks. These are the ones that I bump into all the time. So that was to answer one question. The next question you had was
You told me to remind you Operation 40.
Operation 40. Operation 40. My God. Okay, so in the late 50s, thank you for getting me back on track. In the late 50s, the CIA was very successful with many coups d'etats, like you said, in Guatemala and other places. But the thing was, when they had to do assassinations, what they normally did, they went in, they found assassins, they hired them, they trained them, and then they carried out these operations. But it was sort of like a bit clumsy. The system wasn't well oiled. And so I'm not really sure. I think it was Bill Harvey that came up with, Wild Bill Harvey, that came up with the idea, why don't we create a mobile unit, an assassination death squad that can just be moved around globally and used over and over again. We use the same players, we just transport them from place to place, just like a rock band on tour. And so Eisenhower was given the task to create this whole thing. And so he gave the actually the task was moved over to Richard Nixon, who was prime minister at the time. And Richard Nixon then contracted three gray wolves from the CIA, E. Howard Hunt, Ted Shackley, the blind ghost, and David Atlee Phillips, the controller of Lee Harvey Oswald, among others. But both Ted Shackley and David Atlee Phillips were the commander of the chief of the Western Hemisphere of Black Ops and psychological operations and all of these things, massive big players. And so these three were recruited or sent to Florida, specifically Miami, to start recruiting people that could be used as assassins. This was to be, it was not only assassins, it was a group of about 80 people, where about 25 of them were to be assassins. Some of them were for blackmail, some of them were educated. There was one woman also, Marita Lawrence, as honey trap, but also assassins. But anything that could be used to destroy or organize, like revolutions, whatever, all of it was in this group. So what they did was they recruited mostly exiled Cubans. They had the problem with Fidel Castro to start with. That was target number one, to knock out Fidel Castro. And there was a lot of ex-military individuals from Cuba, former police officers, former police agents that they recruited. Brutal individuals they hated Fidel Castro, so they were perfect for the thing. And then these people were then brought to Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana, where they were trained there. They were trained in Guatemala in jungle warfare, and they were trained also in the Everglades in Florida. And they were trained with all kinds of weapons, explosives, poisons, guns, machine guns, bazookas, you name it, anything that was connected to assassinations, they were trained in it. And so this group, the guy that was put in charge for the finances was a very young George Bush Sr. He was the guy, the paymaster for this time. Please remember, this is in early 60s. He was a young man at that time. Operation 40, some of the people that trained them, one of them is James Files, who is an acquaintance of mine now. He was the guy that fired the final headshot at Kennedy later on in 63. He's still around. I've done multiple interviews with him, and he's still being completely neglected. It's unbelievable. But anyway, so this group 40 was when first they tried with Fidel Castro multiple times, but then after the Bay of Pigs, and when suddenly Kennedy was started to be seen as a traitor, even though now we find out that it wasn't Kennedy that was responsible for this whole Bay of Pigs fiasco, they turned this cannon of death from Fidel Castro towards Kennedy. So when you look at the assassination in Dallas, which is one that I've focused a major part of my life into exposing on a street level, the people, the alleged or the actual shooters on location, so many of them, so many of them are connected to Operation 40. Operation 40, Operation 40. And then after that assassination, which was a masterpiece when it comes to ambushes and assassinations, they went up in the ranks as top assassins. And they followed George Bush Sr. his whole career. His whole career, this group was very central. And after Kennedy, they were moved over to Vietnam. They were part of organizing Operation Phoenix, which was a mass murder program of Viet Congs. I mean, horrendous, 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 with Ted Shackley and these people right in the center of the whole thing. And then later, after the Vietnam War, they went down to South America, where they were part of creating many of the coups, like in Chile with Allende. They were the ones that murdered Allende. They murdered Jimmy Files is one of the people I'm talking about now. Felix Rodriguez is another one. They murdered Che Guevara down in Bolivia. They were part of assassinating Allende in Chile in 73.
Can I ask if the attempt on Reagan's life, would that be a part of this as well? Because it seems like the Bush
God,
family was
yeah,
behind that somehow.
you have very good questions, or it's perfect. Yeah, the one that actually shot Reagan with a very special gun. It wasn't a normal gun. It had like a saw blade projectile. Was Felix Rodriguez, exactly the guy we're talking about.
Wow.
And Felix Rodriguez was the number one for George Bush Sr. But in that group, you had everyone like Orlando Bosch, a dentist that was called Dr. Death. He was specialized in bombs. They blew up hundreds of places, including civilian airlines, where hundreds of deaths, and then they were pardoned by George Bush Sr. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable when you see that these people like Bush Sr. is standing there and people are applauding them, when you should say, "Oh my God, this is a monster." If you've ever seen a human monster, that's one of them. And we're sitting there, yeah, he's great. He sounds, yeah, he looks good. And or at least in his old age, you suddenly started seeing his real personality, I think. But yeah, just because I'm a friend of his private hitman, Chip Tatum, a CIA whistleblower, he was the top commander. He was the top commander of Pegasus, an ultra secret hit team, directly under George Bush Sr. So Chip Tatum, he was the pilot for all the presidents from Nixon and up to George Bush Sr. And he was part of carrying out 14 different assassinations for George Bush. And so I asked him about George Bush Sr. And he said, because he spent years together with this guy, and he said, he's the most brilliant guy I've ever met. And he's also the most evil. And that coming from a top assassin, that his whole career was surrounded by people that killed people, and George Bush Sr. was the most evil, that tells you something, So it gives me the chills. So yeah.
I was going to ask you about Jimmy Files or James Files as well. I've seen some interviews with him, and wasn't he, and I'm not going to remember this perfectly, but wasn't he a guy who went into an elevator and was attacked by three guys and he killed them all, or something like that? Is that the same guy?
I'm the one telling you that.
Okay.
Okay. Or at least, yeah, Jimmy Files. It was after he was released from prison. I think he was 76 at the time.
Wow.
And he was grabbed in the street by four guys in their 30s that pulled him into a building to take him out. And one person left the other ones were left dead. And it
Yeah.
was Jimmy Files came out 66, unarmed, 76 years old. This guy was born into a program of top assassins. His mother, I think she was living in Alabama, Mobile, Alabama, and she was very poor. And she signed up for this program where she was inseminated by, uh, I mean, we're talking more or less like super soldier program, Operation Paperclip. And so she was inseminated by them. And then when she gave birth to this child called James Sutton, officially he died at birth. There's a death certificate saying dead at birth, but the child was taken over by these scientists, and then his whole life, he's never gone to a normal school. He never had normal friends. All of it has been connected to killing. And he's not the only one. There's two other very connected in this thing that from a very young childhood, their whole life has been set to become these. I mean, it's almost like Mission Impossible type of guys that, or ninja. I would label them maybe like Western
Yeah.
ninjas,
And two,
because
even the Stranger Things, where they based that on that Montauk project, it seems like there may have been some Nazi scientists behind that as well. And of course, they were doing MK Ultra type experiments on these kids. But I think the end goal there was to create some sort of psychic assassin with that
it,
program.
yeah. And I think we make a mistake if we say Nazi scientists that were brought in.
Okay.
These were these were Nazi scientists that was brought into a Nazi organization. It's the mindset is the same. So it's not them bringing in the Nazi mentality. They're being headhunted because they were very good and pushing it. So we see what is called Nazi mindset or mentality is the thing that are inside these organizations. We see CIA, oh, it's American, it's the American way of life. Absolutely not. The mindset is exactly what we blame Hitler for, or these things. It's a very brutal, very brutal. But nowadays, what is fascism? What is Nazism? It's like when you look at them, it's like they stand for the same thing. There's just two extremes, and then it ends up with the same result.
Even in the 40s, they got along well, those two, the
Oh
fascists and
God.
the Nazis. Mussolini and Hitler had a lot of long talks. They seemed like they got along great.
Yeah, but then I mean we're coming to a point also where when you start looking at Hitler, it's getting very confusing. It's because we're being told one thing. And I mean, I used to be an expert on the Second World War. I put many years into becoming very good at it. I traveled around in Europe to many of these locations. And I mean, I really thought, oh my God, oh my God. And now I'm sort of like, oh my God, where we start to have to unlearn. Do you know that Mein Kampf is written in really poor German because the translation was really badly done? And it seems like it was the MI6 that wrote the Mein Kampf and
I
then
haven't heard
translated
that.
because the Germans that have read it are saying this is not this is really poor. And do you know
He
the book
contradicted
comp
himself in that.
in the book company that released that book, Mein Kampf, is the same book company that released George Orwell with 1984. How is that even possible? Here we
Hmm.
are. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's it's like this thing, but it comes from the same source.
Well, with the Orwell story is very interesting because the CIA and British intelligence swooped in there and bought the rights to his book, and they implanted Gloria Orwell as his girlfriend, his last wife. She was a total British spy. So they got in there. I think that they saw him as somebody they either needed to kill or use or both because they bought 1984 and they put that book out. British intelligence did, and then they bought another one of his books. and put it out as well. They turned it into like a cartoon, but it's almost like they
Animal
twisted a few.
Farm.
Animal Farm, that's it. They twisted the ending of that one to make it more or make it less anti-government, actually, in a lot of ways.
Whatever we're talking about, welcome into the world of these agencies.
Yeah.
It is smoke and mirrors, labyrinth inside enigmas, with no locks and the key thrown at the bottom of the sea, turn upside down, white is black, black is white, upside down, inverted. Even the people involved in these operations don't know what's going on. It is so for us to try and with a logic mind say, that's right and that's wrong and that's black and that's white. It is so super layered, but it's only when you start seeing these weird connections where you just have like, you have to say like, wait a second, am I being completely duped? And I can only speak for myself. The answer is yes, 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 and yes. And I'm trying to get unduped over the years, and the more you start seeing that there is a logic behind it, these things that looks like completely random when you said was random when it's the same people appearing there and then he's there again and over there and over there and over there and who funded it? Well, it's just coming from the same source. And where did that come from? Well, it just came from the same. You have to ask yourself, is this an illusion? And this is where I come back to all the time. We're looking at an illusion of confusion of reality, where reality is really beautiful, but we're being deceived and duped with and played with away from the heart. It is the mind that can get to us, where actually the one that should rule us is the law of the heart.
Yeah,
I tell you, the word brainwashing, I love that. We really need a really good brainwashing, a good rinse, get all the crap out and start fresh thinking. They've hijacked that word as well, because regarding, I'm just going to ramble on, sorry, Tim,
no,
but
I like it. I
okay.
appreciate you being willing to go down tangents today, and you've tied it all in nicely so far. And I have so much I could say about a lot of little things that we've talked about, but my mind went back to real quick something you said a while back, that you said we might get to this, so I wanted to bring it back up. They leave clues in the forensic evidence, you said.
This is something I had no idea about, absolutely no idea. And then in the fall of 2014, I was contacted by an anonymous source, still don't know who that person is, who said, I followed you for years, you're doing great, but you're missing out on the clues. And I was like, what do you mean clues? He said, the hidden clues in the forensic evidence. I was like, what do you mean? And he said, they're hiding. I think this guy was involved in these type of operations and feeling bad. So he was sort of giving me hints. He said they always leave clues about upcoming attacks in the forensic evidence. And I said, why on earth would anyone do such a stupid thing? That doesn't make any sense. And he said, it's because of the law of karma. They are up to so many horrible things, and they're very aware of the law of karma. What you do comes back to you. So the way they reason, I mean, in my world, it's complete nonsense, but the way they reason is that if they show us, even in subtle ways, what they're going to do, and we don't react, then indirectly we consent, and then the bad karma's on our shoulders, not theirs. That is why they keep pushing it out there. I mean, if you look at 9/11, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of clues. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. So many other operations, and so I didn't think much of it. I mean, I'm getting contacted by a lot of people. I don't know who they are. Sometimes it's of value. Sometimes they're absolute nutcases. Sometimes they're some sources trying to divert my attention. So I didn't know, but I just organize all of this information. As always, I've got what I believe is the world's biggest research vault. That is also for sale, please, on my website, lightonconspiracies.com. But anyway, but what I was seeing after that conversation was that there were four different things that I felt that it was almost like they were being predicted. There was one in Dublin, Ireland. There was one in Paris, France. There was one in Copenhagen, Denmark, and there was one in Florence, Italy. I mean, they hadn't happened yet, but these were sort of like pointers that I saw could be connected. Boom. Then there was an alleged ISIS attack at a power plant outside Dublin. Didn't think of it, but it's just like registered somewhere. Then the Charlie Hebdo attack happened on the 9th of January 2015. And I was sort of like, wait a second, that's Dublin, then Paris, meaning could Copenhagen be the next? So there's always a drill before these alleged mass shootings or terror drills. The drill is there to prepare, to rehearse, to all of these things. So that is a dead giveaway. If there is a security drill, that is something that shows this can be happening. Not always, but when there's one of these false flags, there will always be a drill. So I went out public. That was the first time I ever did that. But at that time, I'd done thousands of interviews. So anyway, so I have this incredible network of radio hosts. So I went out on two big American channels saying, I don't know, this is what I've been informed about. This is what I see. And if so, is it possible that the next one would be Copenhagen? And boom, it happened. Not on the exact day. I said on the 14th of January, and quite a few people in Copenhagen heard that, went on location, the exact location I was pointing out, with cameras just waiting, and nothing happened. But then exactly 1 month later, on the 14th of February, there was this mass shooting in Copenhagen. The exact location, the exact time, but 1 month later, and on Valentine's Day, which is not a day of romance, that comes from Shakespeare, but it's a day of death. There's three different people a long time ago that were executed on that day. That is why it's called Valentine's Day. So that was the first time I thought, oh my God, they're actually connect that what he said is actually true. And then I went out big time and warned about Florence in Italy. And the day after I did that, there was a massive big headlines in Italy, failed ISIS attack on Florence, Italy. So I thought that's 4 out of 4. And since then, I've focused solely, more or less, on finding the clues. When something happens, I'm looking for the clue. What is it? Because if we can find the clue, that means that we can become one step ahead and then possibly stop it. And up to date, I connected or predicted up to 3 months before these things happened, 77 of these alleged mass shootings or alleged terror attacks, which has made my last name actually a verb. Hashtag Dammegård or hashtag Dammegårding is to find the hidden clues and help to stop upcoming attacks. So, I mean, with that track record, I'm just saying it seems like I'm onto something, I would say. And to say it mildly, because 77, that's a lot. So how come I have not been approached by police saying, how do you know these things if you're not involved? Option one. How do you know these things that we can't figure out? Please come and help us. Option two. Have I ever been approached in other ways than trying to knock me off, like this, or censor me heavily, or destroy my website, destroy my reputation? No. What does that tell you? They are in on it. Mm-hmm. They are in on it. They are the ones doing it. They're
we saw
inside.
that in Maui.
Oh, Maui. Maui. I get goosebumps, that poor place.
Yes.
So we have Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is to push us all into smart cities, 15-minute cities, where everything is digitally connected, digitally controlled, in a sci-fi, very soon to be, if we don't do anything about it, completely controlled surrounding, where the city is like, we're talking digital prisons. That is what Agenda 21 is about, to push us into that through technology from the Wallenberg family to a major extent. Okay, if you ask me, horrible, horrible, this is what you can get from me. everything centralized, everything controlled. And if you don't obey and if you don't want to do what we say, you can't shop, you can't eat, you can't meet anyone. You know, not good, not good, not good.
Well,
So,
I think if we could tell people one thing, or at least for me, it would be, is something you mentioned earlier. It's that problem, action, solution. If we can train people to be on the lookout for that, maybe we can slow down this train to 1984 that we're on. And
and
this,
it's problem,
and
it's
we can
problem.
stop ourselves from becoming immersed in one of these 20-minute, 15-minute cities.
I completely agree. So it's problem, reaction,
Reaction.
solution. They they have the solution from day one. But it's the question, how can they push it on us? How would we accept something that stupid, that against our own benefit? How they have to create a problem. So they create a problem in the form of a boom, of an explosion, alleged mass shooting. Please notice the word alleged mass shooting, alleged terror attacks, alleged virus, a financial crash, something designed to freak us out. Boom! To get the reaction from us. Oh my God, something needs to be done. We need help. And then we turn towards the people we think are there to protect us, not understanding that it's actually them who created the problem. This is an old Roman tactic. And then we applaud when the solution comes because they will say, well, the only way we can solve this horrible problem, that horrible problem is, and boom, in it comes. And every single time it's more and more militarized Robocop police forces that looks like cyberspace super tanks, uh,
Patriot
surveillance
Act.
cameras, Patriot Act, come on, Homeland Security. It's the exact opposite. Homeland absolute mayhem is what it stands for. Patriot Act is absolute traitors act. You have to turn it around. It's inverted. It's inverted. These things were on standby when 9/11 happened. They were thousands and thousands and thousands of documents ready to be approved of for before 9/11. Boom, 9/11 happened, and overnight, suddenly these entities appeared on stage for your protection. Absolute bullshit, absolute on standby, completely part of this whole thing. FEMA is a horror organization, a horror. It is an organization of horror. Let me repeat that, of horror. When they come, you think that you're safe. It's the exact opposite. They are part of creating it. So let's go to Lahaina. Okay, so smart cities, but also smart islands. Smart islands. An island is an isolated area of land that can be easily controlled. That is an experiment. So in the agenda of Agenda 21 is, or the 21st century, is also to make smart islands. And the estate value of beach properties are great. So islands like I live in Bali, very, very similar to Lahaina, to Maui. They're very, very similar, the whole setup. And there were plans for Bali as well. The Philippines, Thailand, yeah, there was a drill going on that went wild in Lahaina. So the thing, what actually I can just come to what happened. This whole thing about fires, natural fires, absolutely not a true word. Look at the anomalies. Look at how is it possible to melt aluminum in a normal fire? How is it these fires that were there, if you look at the cars that were burned out, where some of the engine blocks were melted. This is not just in Lahaina, Maui. There are many in California, many of these other fires. They're not natural fires. There's so many anomalies where the trees are burning from the inside out instead of the outside in, and where things seems to be ignited not from like a normal fire would burn wood, but here we have anything that is connected to metal. So if you got like a wooden plank, the plank would survive except for the areas around the nail. So we're talking about a completely different technology that is used for these things. And I want to say that in 1943, Nikola Tesla was murdered at the New Yorker Hotel in New York. Nikola Tesla was the guy that invented the technology that is now being used through directed energy weapons and thing. He was murdered there by Reinhard Gehlen and Otto Skorzeny, the bodyguard of Hitler in 1943 in the US. What on earth is going on? It's, the history just doesn't make any sense. But anyway, they took his inventions. And then in 1947, we see the very first fires that have exactly these anomalies in Maine. You have exactly what we have seen in the Paradise Fires and all, where houses have just been leveled with the ground. And still the grass is completely green around it. Bushes, everything that would normally burn is left untouched. And then you have a laser-like precision fire bombing of areas where it's like, if you look at it, it's cleansing, not ethnic cleansing, but it's cleansing areas that is then being prepared for these smart city agendas. So Lahaina, the thing that happened there was a brutal mass murder carried out by the US Space Force. I do not say this lightly. I've been tracking them down. This technology that was used there was the US Space Force weaponry that was unleashed on Maui. FEMA was there to keep everyone out and to control the whole area. There were a lot of different agencies also involved in a military overtake there to push out normal people, destroy and mass murder the people that they couldn't get access to the properties, and take over and make a smart city. And in addition, what they've been doing, because this is not the only island area that is planned for this whole thing. And I warned about Cape Coral in Florida, saying that would be the second, because there are many steps to these agendas. This is not overnight. This is years of planning and mapping, and with green laser scanning of the area so that the mapping will fit in perfectly, so that the weaponry will also just destroy the buildings that they want to get rid of, the buildings that they want to keep. They have an operation called Blue Roof by the US, I forgot the name of them, corps. It doesn't matter.
Blue something always, right? You see,
yeah. But the Blue Roof operation is these buildings with the blue roof, the blue color is resistant to the laser, to these laser weapons, so they would be left intact. This is also why you will see in these fires and in Lahaina, everything blue was left intact. So you have all of these burnout cars and a blue car completely left alone, just half a meter from a thing that is melted to everything is gone, everything. And then you have like plastic bottles or plastic garbage cans, blue, left completely intact. The blue is very, very central. Now in Sweden, they're in Gothenburg, they've started an operation called Operation Blue Shield. I tell you, that is bad news if I've ever heard it. It's really, really bad, because
when you look
anyway,
at Maui,
can I just say,
yes,
this whole thing about the fire truck, I mean, it was so sinister on a level of evil that is just unbelievable, because they turned off the water. The water, what do you call them, so that the fire brigades couldn't get any more water. And there was nothing natural at all about the whole thing. It was precision fire bombing without the bombs. Fire and the way that they then took over all of these. Where did all of these cars come from? If you look at the registration plates and the people in police uniforms that were not local police officers. And I want to bring back also that the police chief from Las Vegas, the Las Vegas mass shooting, and his deputy was relocated to Lahaina, Maui. They were headhunted and paid for the whole move over there. And they broke the rules. Normally on Maui, you have, I think somebody has to live I believe, 3 years on the island before they can go and be elected for an official job like that. And here they just bypass that whole thing. And there were a lot of reactions against him, Pelletier, and in the police force, many people quit their jobs and stuff. And then his private secretary died in this car crash that is just so not real. She was murdered also to silence her. And FEMA, and you know, like when Biden finally got his diaper butt over there, I mean, instead of sending billions to the Ukraine, that is a whole different option thing for you. Billions over there for what? The people per family in Lahaina, Maui, was given $700 per family. That's it. That's it. There was no air support like earlier years ago. There was another disaster in Maui, and you had all of these helicopters and planes were flying in provisions and food and water and clothes, whatever was needed. Here, nothing. Zero. Zero.
Seems like it was a land grab.
No, it was a mass murder land grab. That's it.
Yeah.
Boom. And you have the same people also that was in the California fires in Paris. There's especially one guy that he appears everywhere. And what they do is they clear the properties. They clear them. And what they do is like there's nothing left, you know. And then they put a sign with a green tick. Not like, oh, a cross, like we're so sorry, this is a place of death and we should respect it. No, a green tick, like this one.
Yeah,
and the exact guy from California appeared in Lahaina, Maui also doing the exact same thing. And they said the people were not allowed back to their houses, even though the houses were intact. There were roadblocks and military vehicles, and it was a land military operation. And then Biden came over there. Finally, after such a long time, he went over there. And then he said, yeah, and we're just waiting here and so that FEMA can finish the job. His word, finish the job.
Can I point something out with this case in particular? It does seem like, but judging by the reaction of people online and videos I've seen from people who live in that area on YouTube, it seems like with this one, people know something's not right.
But what does that matter? Nobody's doing anything. It's really not
It's a step in the
acceptable.
right direction because
Yeah, but it's the same as you can like something on Facebook and say, yeah, I like this. It makes no difference whatsoever. We need to step up the game. We need to step up the game because it's our future. It's like we're in the same boat. I tell you, it's going like this if we don't do anything about it. Because Lahaina was just the first one. I saw the exact setup for Cape Coral in Florida. I was warning about it like 6 months before. I was saying, please be aware, this is what they're planning here, if I'm correct, because it followed the exact same setup. Here in Bali, also the exact same setup. I've been warning also here, we stopped a massive release of GMO mosquitoes, really horrendous things. One of the things I just want to say, Cape Coral, when this Milton, I mean, more or less this Hurricane Milton, when that came, it came more or less at the time that I had warned that Cape Coral would be hit, and it just went right north of it, right north of it. If that was just a coincidence that it happened, I had predicted September. I think it happened in October, just because I saw the same way that they had carried it out with Lahaina. And I want to point out the way they do it is first, especially when it comes to these Paradise Islands. What they do is first they spend years on mapping up how they would do it like a smart island where everything will be connected and to this, and the mapping of the buildings that they would keep and leave or whatever. All of this architecture stuff is done years ahead. Then They scan, like this is the one of the giveaways, is that there's a green laser scanning of the area. This is about 6 months before they go live. I don't know if this is a set time frame for a reason, but I've seen it in a couple of incidents. So that's why I predicted Cape Coral, because this green laser, boom, 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 and it's even on the local news. Well, don't worry, there's green laser here. It's the Army, the U.S. Army Corps that are just doing their task. At the same time, you've got the Operation Blue Roof by the U.S. Army Corps, where they say that it's because of the hurricanes like this, we offer you free blue tarp to put on the roof of your building. I'm like, blue tarp against a hurricane? I mean, does that make any sense whatsoever? I would say the exact opposite. Maybe that will just, work as a sail and rip off the ceiling. But Operation Blue Roof, please be aware of that if it's in your area, because it has spread to thousands of buildings, especially on the western coast of Florida, where now we had the Hurricane Milton. And if you look at Hurricane Milton, did that act like a normal hurricane? Not at all. Not the Hurricane Helena. It's HARP technology.
Yes.
I'm sorry they weaponized the weather against us. Not good. We're right now in a season of massive floodings in Bali, where I see the chemtrailing going on, and I know within 48 hours we're going to get these massive torrential rains that is just drowning this poor island, and it's not natural. So anyway, get back to this thing. So first the laser, laser mapping of the area. Then there's a release of GMO mosquitoes. And the reason for that, they're connected to Bill Gates. He's got a big factory down in Colombia. The reason for that is to weaponize, I believe, weaponize nature, because these horrendous mosquitoes are bad news, bad news, bad news. And they're planning on releasing millions of them. They were planning on releasing 10 to 10 million mosquitoes every 2 weeks in Maui for 20 years. For 20 years. So why would they do a thing like that? Well, it was a rare bird disease that would help. What I think that they're doing in many different areas are releasing these mosquitoes so that it will weaponize nature, so that when we try to leave these smart cities, nature will be a dangerous place. So we will stay in the cities.
Yeah,
and
the
then
mosquitoes thing freaks me out.
Yeah, that's not good
He
news
needs
at
to
all.
he needs to be stopped. I saw
Yeah.
footage of him releasing mosquitoes from a helicopter at some sort of, I don't know, a talk, maybe it
That
was a
was
TED talk.
in New York. Yeah.
And that's
Oh
that
yeah, and TED Talk. Yeah, he said,
yeah,
"Oh,
that we
okay,
have that has got to stop. You
yeah,
can't let these people release mosquitoes. But
that,
I'm going to highlight something and we can wind down with this. And I appreciate all
yeah,
your time today.
yeah." The
There's
thing is, I need to leave within a few minutes, so the timing
Okay.
is good.
Well, great. We'll go ahead and wrap it up now then. I wanted to say, because you have this terabyte vault, you have all this stuff that you've compiled over the years. And I was just going to tie Las Vegas into it real quick, because I remember back when that happened, a lot of the footage that I saw coming out of that incident was disappeared from the internet. And it's like that with a lot
It's
of these events. So with your vault of newsreels and media reports, I'm sure you have a lot of that stuff that is just not available online anymore, right?
I've got it all as far as I
Yeah.
know. This is a major part of what I'm doing. It's 8 terabytes. It's not
Wow.
1 terabyte. It's 8 terabytes, and it's like I'm really, I think that I'm protecting modern history, real history, because it's being deleted as we speak. Now there was this New Orleans alleged van attack or truck attack. I tell you, within a week or so, footage, except for the official narrative, is gone. The alternative views and stuff, it's gone. It's being burned as we speak. So we really need to guard this whole thing. So please go to my website, lightonconspiracies.com. You have to write it in .com. If you write Light on Conspiracies, Google takes you to something where it says Ole Dammegård Government Podcast. What the hell is that? It's not me but on that, you can help, you can get an online version or also an external hard drive. I really prefer if people get external hard drives that can be hidden or copied and put away for generations to come. So if you want to help me protect it for the future, please do that.
Okay. And I thank you again today. I know you've had death threats. I know you've had these groups that hang in the shadows that have made it really hard on you. I know you've had to move a lot. So I hope people consider that when they listen to this today, that you've been put through a lot of stress because you try to shine a light on the truth. And I wanted to throw that in. And, we appreciate all the work you've done and this crusade that you've been on, if I can even call it that. I mean that in a good way. But tell everyone again where they can find you, and if there's any projects you're working on that you want people to know about, anything like that, just let everybody know.
It's just go to my website, Light on Conspiracies. There's more than 1,300 interviews, podcasts, webinars, sofa talks. I mean, I've done my absolute utmost. And yeah, my monthly newsletter, donations, please consider donations because this is not a way to make a career if you're interested in fame and fortune. So really appreciate any type of support like that. And now, Tim, I need to shoot off.
All right,
sorry about that.
That's okay. This has been great. Thanks again. As always, break the mold, conquer the realm, and thanks for listening.